Matt Baker, Tampa Bay Times, joins us, and Matt covers pretty much everything goings on when it comes to college football in the state of Florida for the Times. And Matt, the big story, we'll get to some other things, but the big story is Florida State, and they're barking about the ACC. Today was the day where they would have had to say that they were leaving the conference. Obviously, that has not happened yet. We're about an hour away from, or not even that long. It's almost close of business, I guess, really, on the East Coast. Do you think this year was kind of phase one of whatever their plan is?
Yeah, and thanks for having me on. I do think this year was look, there's been a lot of unhappy people in Tallahassee for quite some time about the ACC's TV contract situation and what the Noles are getting from it. It just kind of went to a head this year. You know, go back to February, I think it was, when there was a Board of Trustees meeting where they started talking openly about whether it's time to mosey on from the ACC. Then obviously a couple weeks ago that went to, it blew up again. But it just didn't make sense to me that they would want to get out immediately. I mean, yeah, they'd like to, but the question is how. And if you're wrong and, you're trying to get out of this grant of rights agreement and maybe you have a strategy that works, but if you're wrong, it could be $500 million, $1 billion with a B, by the way. Then also you need the Big Ten or the SEC, presumably, to buy into it and agree to take you on. There were a lot of ifs in here, which didn't make sense for me that they would be able to make it happen so quickly, even though this has been going on for a long time. So to me, it's just a matter of, all right, everybody knows they're not going to be there by 2036. How quickly can they get out? Where do they go? And what does that look like? Those are the questions to me now.
So, Matt, just to be clear for those who don't keep close track of all these types of things, today would have been the deadline to move if they wanted to move for next year, correct? So, in theory, that's going to go by here in the next few minutes, and so that closes the door on that. Would there be anything down the line outside of just whenever somebody like Drew Weatherford or whoever it may be decides to, bark again? Is that really probably the next step here, is just more rattling cages and that's about it?
Well, there could be a next step soon in terms of actually trying to leave. I'm not saying it will happen. Sure. I'm saying it could happen. If you listen to the meeting the other day, and believe me, I've sat through way too many Board of Trustees meetings here where they're talking about aviation law and critical software development and all this stuff that your listeners will find riveting. The bottom line is this. They are unhappy, and it's gone to the point from we're unhappy behind the scenes, now we're unhappy in front of the scenes on camera, and now we're really unhappy and thinking of publicly talking about ways to get out. So where they left things a couple weeks ago at the trustees meeting was, we will come back here soon, sooner rather than later, to actually hopefully have a plan. And I don't know if that's next week. I think it's September 7th and 8th is the next scheduled meeting. They could do it before then. But I guess what I would say is this. I think at some point in the next year, before August 15th of 2024, Florida State has a plan in place, an exit strategy on this is how we're going to leave the ACC. What is it? Can it work? I don't know. But that would be the expectation that I have.
Matt, do you think that they will have a partner in Clemson in that?
I think they would like to have a partner with Clemson or Miami or North Carolina. I mean, these are the schools that are in a similar situation. They're just going about it in a different way. And maybe there's less risk involved if there's more people who are willing to jump too. But Florida State, for whatever reason, has been very vocal about this. I think some of it is they've been probably trying to telegraph to the Big Ten and SEC, hey, we're unhappy. You're looking, give us a call, 850. I think some of it's that. I think some of it is the Florida State fans in particular are unhappy. So I think some of the FSU people have been yelling to make sure that their fans and constituents and boosters hear them yelling. I think there's some of that as well. And maybe they're just trying to gauge support in terms of what is it that we can actually make happen here. I know, the Clemsons and North Carolinas and Miami's, Virginia, those guys would have options, but it's a matter of, can somebody make that first leap, and what's the blueprint to get out?
So we know Florida's fine where they are. FSU, Miami, it remains to be seen. UCF's about to jump into the Big 12. We'll be playing their first Big 12 game here in less than a month. And, you can't help but see the latest Big 12 moves, the latest Big 10. Now there's the PAC remaining schools talking with the ACC and the How does USF feel about all that's going on right now? I mean, what's the level of frustration, do you think, for the fan bases and, just trying to find their place after the past couple years and the way that it's gone?
Yeah, I think there's definitely some, I've written this in the past at TampaBay.com. USF picked a bad time to be bad at football is what it boils down to, because if you could rewind the clock and where they were in kind of that, 2016, 2017, that range, when they were pretty good, if you put that team and teleport that to today, where USF nationally ranked, that sort of thing, I think they would have a home. I think it would have worked out differently. But the fact is they've been awful for the last couple of years, 4 wins in 3 years, which is why they find themselves on the outside looking in. So there's a good amount of frustration on just where the timing broke with USF. I think there's some frustration with fans because they were so kind of lackadaisical when it comes to facilities over the years in terms of, they just recently formally opened the indoor practice facility earlier this year. I'm here to tell you, in Florida, at this time of year, it rains almost every day. Not having an indoor was a major hit. And then obviously the on-campus football stadium that they're working toward, all this type of stuff could have been done a while ago. For whatever reason, it wasn't. And you factor all those things in together, that's why USF was left behind. And I think there's some unhappy people there. And just to say one more thing on this, their academics is on the rise. And remember, conference realignment is not run by the ADs or the football coaches. It's run by the university president. And USF academically is the best place they've ever been. Just recently admitted to the AAU, which is a prestigious group of research schools. I think there's only 71 in the country. So there's a lot going for it. It's just a matter of their football team has been terrible. And unless that improves or until that improves, it's going to be hard for them to find a bigger home.
And, like Craig mentioned, it's got to sting because their big rival just down the road, 90 miles away, is expanding. They're in conference expansion. They're in the Big 12 starting this year. And Gus Malzahn appears to be reaping the benefit that's already on the recruiting trail.
Yeah, absolutely. UCF's on pace to have their best recruiting class ever. Got a commit from blue chip running back Stacey Gage, who's from the Tampa area originally. They're doing what UCF, I think, is supposed to do and what USF could have done and maybe will do at some point in this, as the time goes on, where those are both programs at major schools, big-time schools, huge enrollments, huge alumni bases, infertile recruiting grounds where I think everybody knew if it took off at one of them, it had the potential to really take off. And it has taken off at UCF. Obviously you look at the success they've had, the Fiesta Bowls and the Peach Bowl and all that stuff. Now you're seeing it on the recruiting trail, and there's definitely some people in USF and in Tampa looking over like, man, why couldn't we have that? And again, maybe if things break differently or broke differently in the past, maybe that could happen.
Matt, pivoting elsewhere, the biggest story in Florida sports right now, Graham Mertz, starting quarterback for the Gators. I mean, I don't think this was much of a shock to anybody, but what's sort of been the reaction just around that part of the country for, Billy Napier's announcement of Mertz being the guy?
Yeah, it was no surprise at all. I expected it. I think most Florida fans expected it. Just because, you bring in a transfer who has his experience, I think, with 32 starts at Wisconsin, you knew he'd be the guy, and so he is. Where I think it's going to be interesting is how good can he be at simply being efficient? Billy Napier's, the stat he looks at with quarterbacks is a 145 passing efficiency. That's the number. About 40th in the country last year. So he's not looking at you to be a superstar. He's looking at you to be good, to manage the game. I don't mean that as a pejorative, by the way. Just to manage the game, take what's there, use 2 really good running backs and Etienne and Montrell Johnson, and a good offensive line, kind of take what the defense gives you, and then when there's an opportunity to take a shot, take a shot. But first, make those intermediate throws and the short throws in a way that Anthony Richardson didn't last year. So that's kind of the upside on Mertz. If he can be efficient and make the unspectacular plays and make some big-time throws when the situation calls for it, maybe we can see a jump from Florida, or at least have them kind of outperforming the middling expectations this year.
How were you surprised though? And I don't mean to, you just mentioned he's a game manager, Graham Mertz. Were you surprised that they didn't get it better on a transfer quarterback and get maybe hotter in that market earlier on?
Yeah, a little bit. Billy said in the offseason, I think they had 8 different guys on staff, including Billy, who were looking at, I think they evaluated 24 quarterbacks who either were in the transfer portal or they thought might go in the transfer portal. And Graham Mertz was their guy. Now, could that mean they missed on other people? Maybe they wanted Michael Pratt, who was at Tulane and didn't go, or Sam Hartman from Wake Forest, and maybe they just missed on him. Maybe there was some of that. But look, Mertz was a really talented player in high school. He was a top 100 national recruit in the 247 composite. I think the number 3 pro style quarterback, obviously one of the better quarterback recruits in the history of Wisconsin. So it's not like he was a schmuck. It's just, it didn't work out for him there. And maybe if he is talented, and maybe he just needed a change of scenery, and maybe that's what the staff thought. Look, we can put this guy in our system, get him a fresh start, let him hit the reset button, maybe he can take off.
Matt Baker, Tampa Bay Times. Matt, thanks for rolling with us. We appreciate it. Always great having you on the show. That's Matt Baker, Tampa Bay Times, with us here. And